Christmas. Surprise. Are you ready? Okay. You're good? All right. Okay, yeah.
We did see that Olin is on for that item. It's going to be very short today. He's our consultant, and with us being a last minute change, he didn't hear that. So
Okay, well, you'll remind me when we get to that point. So.
yeah.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. My name is Joan Beely. I'm the chairperson for the Planning and Zoning Commission. This meeting may be attended in person or by remote video or telephone conference. Zoom conference access information was provided for the commission members, applicants, and other interested persons to participate and noticed on the agenda posted on the town website. For those attending, I would ask that you mute yourself if you are able to do so that we do not get any background noise. I have two very important reminders. First, every time you speak, you must state your name and title for the record. Second, you must be careful not to speak over one another so that everyone who is listening can hear what's being said and we all have a clear record. For this reason, it's necessary when it comes time for the commission members to comment and ask questions about a particular agenda item before any action is taken, and then to vote on that agenda item. Our planner, Maureen Juicy, will call the roll as needed. Also, the regular meeting is being recorded, and the recording will be posted on the town's website. I'm now going to ask Maureen to take attendance by calling the roll. Thank you.
John Michael O'Brien
Excuse.
is excused. Sandra Capola. Here. Diane Dorsey.
Here.
Timothy Zigma.
Here.
Brian Rogan.
Here.
Steve Baldwin also requested to be excused.
Okay.
Chairman Bailey.
Here.
Peter Zaragoza, alternate.
Here.
Andrew McNanny, alternate.
Present.
Steve Biella Jr., alternate.
Present.
So we have two members to have.
Okay. Let's go with Steve Biella and Andrew Magnani for this role, and Peter stand by just in case you need it. Okay, thank you. All right. First up is the review of the minutes for December 2nd, 2022. Do we have any comments regarding the minutes? Do we have any adjustments that need to be made?
I'll make the motion to approve.
Okay, motion by Mr. Rogan,
Second.
second by Mr. Lignani. Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Abstain. Okay. Mr. Zigma and Ms. Dorsey have abstained, but we still have a compliment here, so the minutes pass.
I would, they abstain from accepting the minutes. You don't object to anything, but you abstain. Why?
We're not present. The question was, why did they abstain? They abstained because they were not present for the meeting, so therefore they have no
Oh.
comment on the minutes. Does that answer the question coming from the audience?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So we can move on.
I hear you.
Scheduling public hearings. We have a special permit site plan application of the Preserve SM LLC for 76 units proposed, including 48 buildings of 2 or 4 units and 28 single-family units on Lot 151, Randacre Lane. The suggested date for this is February 3rd. Do we have a motion from the commission?
So moved, Commissioner Zigma, February 3rd.
Okay.
Second, Commissioner Dorsey.
Okay, we have the motion, we have a second, we have further discussion, and all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? So moved. Commissioner business, we have the discussion regarding the approved buffer restoration plan and site conditions for the Commerce Street Holdings LLC at 30-36 and 86 Commerce Street. This is in East Berlin.
Yes.
Okay, and what do we have on that?
So our attorney, Jennifer Capola is on the line, and I believe she has an update with regard to the litigation and the restoration plan with the zoning board of appeals.
Okay. Good evening, Attorney Capola. How are you today?
Hi, I'm okay. Good evening. Again, Jennifer Capola, Corporation Counsel's Office, Sewell and D'Onofrio. For the record, I'm sorry, I'm in my car. I'm sorry I couldn't be with you tonight. I have another litigation matter that I'm handling. But I just wanted to provide you with an update on this matter. You'll recall that the commission approved a buffer restoration or a vegetative buffer restoration plan back in October on it. And there was a draft stipulated judgment. The commission is not the defendant in the pending litigation matter. It is the ZBA as a result of Ms. Juicy issuing a cease and desist order that did get appealed sort of a second time around. I'll just say that in terms of the facts of the case. But again, you approved the vegetative buffer. We went before the ZBA. We're intending to go before the ZBA with a stipulated judgment. And as the parties were negotiating the terms, attempting to negotiate to conclusion, the issue was raised was how we were going to deal with some other issues of non-compliance with the existing approvals for the properties. So you'll recall that Maureen and I were before you last month. We asked whether or not the commission would engage us in addressing those issues through the stipulated judgment. And we do have sort of this issue. The reason why we brought the buffer back to you was because we didn't think it was appropriate for the ZBA to go forward with the stipulated judgment without your approval. And this is a similar circumstance. We don't think that these particular terms could be entered into in the stipulation without the commission approving them, because we think that it's within the commission's authority as opposed to the ZBA's authority. But we do think that it's an important part of the stipulated judgment, including these terms. So we did get some language. I guess, Maureen, was it on Tuesday that we received the language? I believe so.
I believe so as well.
From opposing counsel. I'm sorry, I'm just.
If I might, just in a nutshell, just to refresh everyone's memory, this stipulation agreement.
So the stipulation for Jennifer, if I can do a little summary, the stipulation for judgment
Yes,
is
go ahead.
agreement that the zoning board of appeals will come to with the applicant in order to settle the litigation. However, there are items within that stipulated judgment that would normally fall under site plan approval purview. So those are under the authority of the Planning and Zoning Commission instead of the Zoning Board of Appeals. And so some of those issues, such as the restoration plan for the buffer, which we brought back before you and you approved, that's a portion of that. And then a couple of other paragraphs, I'm sure there's a term for it, within that stipulated judgment are things that council feel, council and I, but council felt we needed your input on before those get put into the judgment. There are a couple of items on the site plan that aren't the buffer. There are other changes that have been made to the plan, the connection between the two lots that they own. Their parking area that's within the area that they have parking adjacent to the building, gravel expanded a bit, things like that that would normally be perhaps under a site plan amendment or administratively approved, and therefore, if there's terminology in there with regard to settlement, we want the commission to have some input on that.
So are we going to see these adjustments in writing or whatever, or on a map, or
So I think,
or are you?
I think that's what Jennifer is asking.
Yes.
So she needs to ask the question that needs to be answered at this point. We've been going back and forth with the language in it for the past few days.
All right,
So
so, yes,
So the
Jennifer, I
biggest,
need
thank
to ask the
you,
question.
Maureen, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, it's difficult for me because I'm not there in person and I am on Bluetooth, but, so thank you for Maureen for jumping in there. So the crux of it is, substantively, in terms of the language that they've proposed to include in the stipulated judgment, I'm gonna read it to you. It's just a few sentences long, and I'll go slowly through it and interject a couple of comments. But they've added other existing site conditions, a section to the general terms of the proposed stipulation or agreement between the parties. It reads that the ZBA acknowledges that the plaintiff has removed vehicles from the areas that were not included as parking on the approved plan. And by approved plan, we're referring back to approvals going back some years ago now, that Maureen had found that they were in violation of. And that language, that first sentence, was actually included in the draft. The majority of it was included. The language has been tweaked a little bit, but the majority of it, the general idea of it, was included in the proposed draft stipulation that we had sent to them. So that's fine. But now here's where we get to the additional language that they're proposing. So it says the plaintiff shall not introduce any vehicles into the areas contemplated for plantings, okay, and for the non-disturbance of undergrowth pursuant to the final restoration plan. So they're saying, you know, they're not gonna have vehicles in those areas. And then it says, attached as Exhibit H hereto is an existing condition survey of the subject properties, and they have in parens existing conditions because they're going to use that term in the stipulation thereafter. So with regard to that, I did speak to their counsel. They had prepared a existing conditions survey. They had one done. You may recall, again, you had prior applications, relatively recent prior applications on this site. There was an existing condition survey that was done. I believe the year was 2019. They're proposing to update that existing condition survey. So that's the Exhibit H that they're proposing. Okay, they're gonna within the next month or so have their consultant do that. But that's part of the agreement. And then it says the parties acknowledge that upon the satisfaction of the parties' respective obligations under the stipulation, there shall remain nonconformities between the approved plan and the existing conditions as modified by the final restoration plan. And it's as modified because, of course, you know, they're acting on that restoration plan. Okay, so they're acknowledging that there's going to remain nonconformities between that original approval and the existing conditions as modified, okay? To the extent that any such nonconformities exist, it is the intent of the parties that no further violation shall be issued. So I'm going to stop there, okay? So what they're saying is, to the extent that there remain any nonconformities, and again, you know, they're referring, and that's one comment that I gave back to them, is what Maureen just relayed to you about those nonconformities, that detail. I do think that needs to be in here. So that was one comment that I gave back to them today. But again, this is the draft language we have. We can make that change potentially if they agree. So to the extent that any such nonconformities exist, is the intent of the parties that no further violation shall be issued, which will mean that we're agreeing that Maureen's gonna not again issue them another notice of violation or cease and desist order on those same violations. Okay. And then it says, to the plaintiff with respect to same, unless and until following the date of this stipulation, and there's a 1 and a 2, the plaintiff shall have sold, leased, or otherwise conveyed an interest in any portion of the subject properties, other than the granting of a mortgage, to a third party. So they shall have sold, leased, or otherwise conveyed an interest in any portion of the subject properties to a third party, or 86 Commerce Street shall no longer be used for the purposes contemplated under the approvals. So they're saying that it's basically asking, will you agree to forbear on any further enforcement action with regard to those nonconformities until such time as either of those things happen? So the plaintiff shall have sold, leased, or otherwise conveyed an interest in any portion of the subject properties to a third party, or 86 Commerce Street shall no longer be used for the purposes contemplated under the approvals. And again, the approvals they're referring to are the approvals going back now many years. Did I explain that clearly, Maureen? I know it's a little
I was
complicated.
actually this morning speaking, if you don't mind, I'm gonna try to do a little simpler summary and see if it, make sure I just don't say anything incorrect, because it will be much simplified. So there are those
Okay.
changes that were made. I'm sorry, what? Should I go ahead?
No, I said, okay, go ahead. Yep, thank you.
So there were changes. The buffer area is the area that has been the main focus of the concern, and the resolution of that should mitigate much of the concerns we've heard so much about with regard to the violation. They then had some site plan changes that are in the part of the property that's getting used, that was authorized for use, but like I said, the gravel got extended when they added gravel by feet, not by tens of feet, like the buffer had been. And what they're asking is that because they are planning to move a substantial portion of that operation to a new facility that's being built, that instead of coming in for a site plan amendment right now, that they not be cited for a violation for a period of time defined in the stipulation by the transfer of ownership or the change of operation, and those other items that Jennifer listed, until one of those things happen, because the new occupant may need the property to operate in a different way. And if they're going to change traffic circulation or something else, that they get to do it at that point and forbear that violation until a certain time period. Or it's still in violation for the rest of the property. Okay, you did the buffer, but you still, you haven't met the obligation of the violation yet. The focus of our remedy has been on buffer area, and we do know they're building another facility.
Question, whatever happened to the refrigeration containers that were running 24/7 and all, the neighbors were concerned about the noise, it was relentless.
So the violation portion of that was on that area that they expanded, and they were storing vehicles there and had the refrigerated trucks there, as well as, and other places on the property, but they are, their use approval is for the repair of those, includes repair of those refrigeration trucks. But the buffer was supposed to be buffering some of that.
Yeah, 'cause I think we kind of split hairs with that, whether or not the repair really allowed them to run these containers 24/7. I think that was part of the neighbors.
So it's more, and again, I didn't bring that portion,
Yeah, that's
those
okay.
documents with me. But because that's kind of the ZBA part, but the refrigeration was mentioned from the first approval. If I recall the minutes correctly, the fact that that's part of their operation and they take trucks there to get repaired off the road wasn't supposed to be the substantial portion of business,
Yeah.
but it was part of their business and their narrative that was part of that hearing, because I went back and read all those minutes.
So what they're asking us for is to not cite any more violations until they can.
Yeah, so I tried to, so I guess the time period was one aspect of that we had been discussing. And whether it made sense for the updated use of the property to be part of that remedy.
Okay, so what you're saying is that they're asking us to take a step backwards so they can finish moving out of town, and whoever the new person is will have to conform to whatever is allowed in that zone.
Well, the stipulated judgment will also be on the land record, so it will be noted to, if a new owner comes, it would be noted to them during their deed search. If they lease the property or they remain part of their operation on the property, I think that's part of the wording that we're looking for feedback on, and whether there's a timeline, whether there's a, whether those triggers are the right triggers. And so whether this commission would agree to one of those triggers or a timeline. I don't know if Jennifer has any other options. Those are the things that I think about.
Yeah.
So if you're talking about the gravel being over by a couple feet,
So,
I would be, and they're really, really minor things. I wouldn't mind a timeline that says you have, I don't know, 6 months to figure things out or come before this board for review of those non-conformities with the site plan amendment.
so I was finally able to bring this up, and the two things I noted immediately were, so way over here on this side is Commerce Street, and this is the buffer area. Obviously, the screen goes up. I've zoomed in on the driveway where the trucks come in. I don't know what the yellow thing is all about. Keep popping up, I'm sorry. And the trucks drive in here. This is the door into the garage. And for instance, they have this parking area back here that they're supposed to have a 5-foot setback for parking, and it's clearly right up to the property line. They added the driveway that comes from this driveway, the entry driveway. They added a connector driveway to their adjacent property to the south that was not approved. And so, you know, the comparison of all those items, we don't have inventory because we don't have the two plans overlaid at this point. But from the 2004, I believe was the last complete site plan, 2000, I think there was their particular approval was 2009, I think, if I remember the dates correctly. So it's comparing what they have right now as far as the limits to that 2009 plan and remedy those. And those are the two obvious things I probably get.
Okay, so they're gonna,
And whether,
so they're gonna work with what they were supposed to be approved for, and they're gonna realign their project to bring it within that scope. And they're hoping that we do not cite them anymore as they're moving out of Dodge. Tim,
The way I heard it is, they want to transfer this property to someone else. Eventually, you might have a buyer for it. And they don't want any violations on the property transfer. As far as I'm concerned, that they should correct any violations. And note it that they're completed before transfer on that property. They don't want to do the violations. They should correct all violations before it's transferred. I mean, so, you know, either that or that new owner needs to know that there's violation on the property with the town, and the new owner has to assume the violations, which gotta get it done. You know, either way. So I don't mind giving them 3 months or so to get the completion of the violations and let them sell the building. Or put in a stipulation, a new buyer that does the violation corrections. I don't know if we could do that.
well, I think that's what the attorney's trying to figure out, is that what does the commission want? So I'm gonna go this way, guys.
I actually agree with Tim this time. Yeah, I'm good with that, absolutely.
All right,
Do we know how long it is till the new building is built?
So I want to clarify that while I understand they're building the new building and that some of their operation will move, I don't know that we know whether or not their entire operation will move there. And therefore, I don't want to speak to guessing what the what do you call it, the glass ball, you know, into the future. We don't have that, we don't know for sure, so.
We can't look in the glass ball either, so
Yeah.
the violations are there, they gotta be corrected.
Yeah.
There should definitely be a time frame.
Yeah, I agree with Tim. I think it would be inappropriate for us to allow them to pass on something that they should have corrected a while back. Onto another property owner, another person that could come into the town and, you know, have a be saddled with this property and then all of a sudden, oh, hey, you know, this is a fixer upper more than something you just buy and move in, you know, or rent and move in, or lease and move in.
Even if they lease the building, they're leasing it with the violation.
Well, they're leasing the problems, yeah, and I just think it's inappropriate for us to allow to have that.
Sandy, any comment on that? No, I agree. All right, so I think you have. it,
So-
Lisa?
Matt,
I have to tell
I'm
you.
sorry, it's Jennifer. May I,
Yes, by all means, Jennifer.
I'm sorry, I don't want to interrupt anyone. And I don't know how well you're hearing me, so I'm going to try to speak as loudly as I can. So I am hearing a couple things, I think. I'm hearing you don't like the idea of the property being sold, transferred with non-conformities on it. You're sort of, it seems like there's an expression of being concerned about the buyer of the property or the lessee and so on and so forth. So again, just to emphasize, there is in the stipulated judgment a requirement that once it is executed and approved by the court, it is going to be recorded on the land records. So any buyer, any lessee, any third party who's taking an interest in the property and ultimately going to be taking responsibility for addressing these nonconformities, they're going to be taking that interest with knowledge of them and the fact that they're taking on that responsibility. So, you know, I can't overemphasize that. I think that, you know, it's a different thing, and this is the other point I wanted to make. I think what I'm also hearing from you, because I'm hearing a period of months and so on and so forth, and that I think is another big question here. You know, there isn't any deadline as stated in their proposed language. So the question is, you know, how long are you willing to give them to have one of these things occur? Okay, and do you want to put a limitation on it? And I think that that's a different issue. And what I'm hearing from you is that you do want to do that. I'm going to just say this to you. I don't know that 3 months or 6 months is going to be realistic in terms of us getting this resolved, because first of all, we're in December, so we're, you know, if we give them 3 months, we're in the middle of winter, right? I think that's kind of unrealistic. But you know, I represent you. You know, I don't decide what direction the ship goes in. I make recommendations, and you can take it or leave it. So it's entirely up to you.
Jennifer,
In terms of your level of comfort, given the nonconformities that we're talking about, again, you know, the big issue has been, since I've been involved with this thing, you know, that restoration of the buffer, and I don't know, do we have confirmation at this point, Maureen, that all those plantings are in or not?
We don't have confirmation yet. Sorry.
but would it be unreasonable for us to say 6 months, and we'd like to have an update as to where they are in 6 months? So if something happens and it's a really hard winter and we get tons of snow and snow doesn't go away until April, we still have, they can come back and give us an update where they are with the project and getting their.
I'd rather get the April date.
So I think, Madam Chair, I'm sorry.
Okay, 6 months brings them to July.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, if you can't get things cleared up, I mean, I would even say, let's be generous and give them into the end of August. If you can't clear things up by the end of the summer, I mean,
Well,
what's going on?
But I mean, even if it goes into July or whatever.
Well, we could always say 6 months, you have to come before us in 6 months, but we can give you an extension should we determine that an extension is. Oh,
Violation's been there how many years?
Well, ever.
Yeah, at least,
All
the
right, so,
violation's been there at least a couple of years now, and I wouldn't give them until the, spring, April 15th, March 15th, when the car or whatever comes out. So we go to April 30th or something. But you gotta have a short date on them, or a leash on them, because they've been 2 years now at least. Minimum more than 2 years.
If I may, the
2009.
the timeline that was, I think agreed upon, I think it was previously discussed, was for the planting to be by the end of April for the buffer area. So I think what their council is asking for is a date beyond that date in order to rectify other site issues on other portions of the property, and that's where this provision within the proposed stipulation for judgment comes in, is that the April date for the buffer area and that, which we were, I don't know if you recall, but at the last meeting, last time we discussed it, they had started planting that buffer before we actually had all the agreements in place, but we were pleased with that because that means it's starting to grow and it'll be already starting to grow in the spring as opposed to, okay, now we gotta prep the land in the spring and get it going. So they're already ahead of the game as far as that April date goes, but we don't know that it's completely completed, and that needs to be completed by the end of April. So the rest of it, the site, they're asking for additional forbearance of a little more time beyond that. And these were the suggestions.
Come back to us at the end of April and tell us what you completed and what you got left to complete, and we'll figure out if we gotta give you more time.
So that's the reason why I said end of August 31st. Why not? It gives them the entire bloody summer in order to clean it all up.
well, I think Tim was hoping that maybe we get some stepping stones.
We
Find
need,
out how far it is in the
we need some
process.
action because it's been a long time and
All
we
right,
need to
this is
force the hand a little bit, I think,
Deliberation.
we
Okay.
need to force it a little bit.
Okay,
Yeah,
yeah.
let's- all right, so is it pretty much the consensus of the commission that we'll go with what? If May 1, they have to by May 1,
Anyone's fine?
by May 1, okay? We good with May 1?
and if they need an extension and we deem it acceptable, we give them an extension.
Okay,
Is
is that good? Oh,
I was gonna say, can we just make sure for Jennifer that language
Yeah.
is something that
sure.
can be put into a stipulation for judgment, because I'm not really sure how that works when you have a moving target. I just don't know.
Just-
I'm sorry, I didn't quite hear that. I'm sorry, I was not clear on that.
I just wanna make sure,
I didn't-
I just wanna make sure that that is language that we can work with for a stipulation for judgment.
You mean what they're asking for us to do? What they're
Yes.
authorizing is 6 months. They want to put a limitation on giving them that essentially that forbearance of enforcement for a period of 6 months, with the opportunity for them to come back to the commission and extend that time frame.
Not 6 months
I
for,
understand. Yeah.
not 6 months till May 1st.
And we want an update.
And then they want an update if they want to extend it.
When we
Well,
want to
it's 6 months
May
is 6 months is not till May 1st.
Well, that's why we're-
Today is December 6th.
Yeah, well, we changed it. We
So
might
you
just.
want to give them a full 6 months? I'm sorry. Do you want to give them a full 6 months?
Now, we want it to be easy, so we look at the calendar and know it's due by May 1st. And if they can't do it by May 1st, they need to come before the commission, so they'll have to notify Maureen before that, so that they can come and explain what they've done and seek an extension.
Okay. So 4.5 months. Okay.
Okay. All right, Jennifer, we're good with that?
Okay, more, I don't think we need anything else from you. Thank you so much,
No
for your
problem.
time. I know it's difficult because we're taking an isolated somewhat, it's not complicated, but it is complicated, and figuring
Absolutely.
out the details. So, yeah, we
Absolutely.
appreciate your time. We want to get you what you want, in terms of compliance. So, okay.
Okay, yes.
Thank you so much. Happy holidays. I'm gonna
Jennifer,
drop
all right,
off.
before
Happy
you-
holidays to all of
Jennifer,
you.
before you go away, Ms. Jorsey has one question.
Of course.
Thank you, Jennifer. The only concern that I have is that the stipulated judgment also include language that would not prohibit the town from taking enforcement action if new violations occur.
Of course. Yes. Absolutely. We will make certain of that.
All right,
That's all.
thank you.
Anything else? No.
No, all right. Good night. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year. Okay, so we can wrap that up.
Thank you.
Okay.
Merry
Bye.
Christmas.
Merry Christmas. All right, on to the public hearings. We have the special permit site plan application for Little House Living LLC to develop 16 single unit buildings and 2 duplex buildings for a total of 20 dwellings for the Berlin zoning regulations of 11.DD planned residential infill development at 1676 Berlin Turnpike. This was opened on November 18th this year. This application will not be heard at the request of the applicant and will be continued to January 20th, 2022 in our scheduled meeting. Do we need a motion on that, or are we just going to move it on down the
I
road?
think you just move it.
I am moving it.
Announced at the request of the applicant, and they have provided an extension to get us to that meeting.
Yes, and now I'm gonna, and then Brian's gonna read the call of the public hearing. All right.
Town of Berlin Planning and Zoning Commission, public hearing notice. The Berlin Planning and Zoning Commission will hold public hearings at its regular meeting on Thursday, December 16th, 2021 at 7 p.m. in the Town Council Chambers, Berlin Town Hall, 240 Kensington Road, Berlin, Connecticut. Interested parties may join the meeting and participate in public hearings in person or remotely by video or telephone as provided below. Following public hearings will be held, at which time an opportunity will be given to those who wish to be heard relative to the following applications. A, zone change request of 550, 554 Berlin Turnpike Associates LLC to change the zone of map 10-2/block 83/lot 13B 502 Berlin Turnpike map 10-2/block 83/lot 13 522 Berlin Turnpike and map 10-2/block 83/lot 14 554 Berlin Turnpike from Berlin Turnpike BT1 to Berlin Turnpike Development BTD. B, special permit and site plan applications of 550 to 554 Berlin Turnpike Associates LLC for a mixed development, including 106 residential units with three buildings, a retail building, and reconfiguring of the parking lot for 2 commercial buildings, 502, 522, and 554 Berlin Turnpike. The applications and related meeting materials are available at the Town Planning and Zoning Department, Berlin Town Hall, 240 Kensington Road, Berlin, Connecticut. Brian Rogan, Secretary, Berlin Planning and Zoning Commission. Dates of publication, Saturday, December 4th, 2021, Monday, December 13th, 2021, excuse me, New Britain Herald.
Thank you, Brian. Okay, so the first item is the zone change request for 550 to -554 Berlin Turnpike Associates LLC to change the zone map 10-2 block 83 lot 13B, 502 Berlin Turnpike, map 10-2, block 83, lot 13, 522 Berlin Turnpike, and map 10-2, block 83, lot 14, 554 Berlin Turnpike, from the Berlin Turnpike BT1 zone to Berlin Turnpike development.
Madam Chairwoman, should we combine A and B into one public hearing? We've done in the past.
Okay, the commission, consensus of the commission is to combine. Okay, all right, so that would be combining that with the special permit and site plan application of the same set of properties. So I'll read that. Okay. We lose our audience that way. We do not want to bore our audience. Okay. But there's Mr. Attorney Sullivan to save the day.
Good evening.
Yeah, good evening, how are you?
Not too bad. Happy holidays, Merry Christmas.
Yeah, Merry Christmas.
New Year's, New Year's. Attorney Tim Sullivan tonight on behalf of the applicant 555 Berlin Turnpike Associates. I'm not gonna bore you with a lot of detail today. With me is Bart Bove, part of the development team, to put up the print of the development, 3 lots. We have 1 lot, 2 lots, and the 3rd lot. We have the retail development, we have the existing development, and we have a residential development. The numbers that were spoken to previously when it was read into the record, the notice was read into the record by Commissioner Rogan. We're not going forward tonight. The reason we're not going forward, the nature of the application, it's a master plan, it's a zone change, sort of the Berlin Turnpike Development Zone, which is going to go from BT1 to the Berlin Turnpike Development Zone, and combine it to a master plan of residential and commercial development. It was referred down to a third-party review back in October and November meetings. We actually had a virtual meeting, Bart and myself and Maureen with Don Paul and me, so we meeting staff to address some of the possible concerns. And based on that, we're going to be making some supplemental submittals in support of the application. One is there were some previous applications. There was a variance application on the small retail and then a site plan application on the small retail development. Mr. Coleman would like to see those before he opines in his third-party review. And Mark could probably speak as well. There were, I think, some other changes as well. The deferred parking, perhaps, things along the architectural and the things, architectural and the things. That's right. So we don't want to go too far into it tonight. We answer any questions if you have them, but otherwise we'll prepare with a full presentation at the January meeting, and that'll give Mr. Paul enough time to give us a complete third-party review.
Okay, excellent. The only question is, I know that you were talking about area 1, 2, and 3. Can you just point them out again? What's
Sure.
the one on the left?
Well, this would be the small retail area. This is the proposed retail area. This would be the lot. You can see it here.
Okay.
You can see the other lot, the dashed line coming in here. That's the existing ABC commercial structure. There would be a reconfiguration of the parking lot. And then coming down here, the last lot would be the proposed buildings, the residential 106-unit residential development.
Okay.
This is over by ABC development, ABC supply. It's kind of stuck down the hole. You have some the CLMP, electric power lines are coming through here. We're dealing with CLMP on that now, or license agreement. There's obviously an awful lot of wetlands, and we're sitting down in the hole. It's not an optimal site, and we're seeking to make the best use of it. We'll go over that presentation.
So I know you're going to save the big presentation in January, but just so that I can put it in my head to think about it. So with the ABC building, the green area that's swamped around it, that's just like a relocation of parking spaces then for ABC?
Talking about down here.
I guess, I don't know, whatever that green thing is,
You talking about this green
you know,
area?
that green thing.
Mark Bove.
I know you'll help me out with this part.
All right, this is the present ABC tool.
Yeah,
At the present time, they've got kind of a large wide entrance. They come into a driveway here that enters into the yard. What we're proposing as part of this project is to redefine the driveway entrance. So
okay,
the main driveway comes through, ABC tool comes off that. This site here is what we're proposing as retail. That was approved about 4 years ago as town hall. automotive repair. We intend to change that to more of a retail type use and tie that driveway in. So all these driveways will utilize this one driveway. Coming through in the back, then will serve the residential properties to the back. ABC Tool will be left untouched. We'll do the retail, that'll be 502. This is 522, and this is 544. I believe it's 544.
All right.
I think she was asking, this green area here.
That's all this green space. There's
Oh,
all
okay,
green space
all right.
here. Unfortunately, you can't do much with the CLP property.
No,
because they
yeah.
can't do what they want to do, so we're
Yeah.
looking, they kind of permission to use their own property for parking lot, but that's the way they work. And then there's this other green space here, We did have some floodplain issues up here. We worked with the Wetlands Commission, and we brought this road so we're above the 100-year flood elevation. And we're mitigating in this large area, bringing this back down to more wooded meadow that wasn't there. And we just had some historical photographs. You see the river kind of wraps around. Our only frontage is actually along the river in this location, on this other river area. It's kind of all by the town of Berlin, or part of the FPT 2008 project. So, so that's kind of what we're doing. But this is the reconfigured parking. I mean, trucks used to come through the parking and into the ABC Tool, and it was wide and expansive. We're looking to narrow that down, make this more of a conforming type parking lot, and the trucks just pull right in.
All right, thank you for answering my questions. I just wanted to see, so as I drive down the turnpike, I'll be able to see and know
Pull
what
and
you're.
look around.
So that land on top is the fireworks place, right?
So that land behind,
Fireworks tent,
I think they've had tents there.
yeah, or the raised
Right,
ranch.
That old raised, the red.
Red ranch.
Oh, White House campaign, that's they had.
Yeah, right.
Oh, jeez. Oh, my God.
It's all for all.
Before my
That's all
time,
their own
it's all
talk, that's a gray hair guy.
There wasn't very-
Before your
before
time,
my
Doc.
time.
Before their time, those other commissioners.
Attorney Sullivan, before my time, but sounds good.
Gray hair
All right.
guy.
Well, thank you for the quick overview and answering those
Just
questions.
piece of housekeeping I did deliver today, the letters that went out to the surrounding properties, as
Oh,
well
yeah.
as the pictures and signs that went up.
Okay.
Thank you.
And for the record, he has also granted an extension to get us to the next meeting.
Oh, that's good.
Timelines we have in order to get there at his request. He's the one who requested his request.
Excellent. All right, so we will see you in
Presentation.
January.
Thank you.
Do we know which meetings they're gonna be?
It's the one meeting in January, is on
16th.
January 20th.
Oh, boy. Well, maybe put them, I'll tell you what, maybe we should put them on.
It's gonna be a better meeting. Good.
Bring coffee.
All right,
Thank
thank
you.
you guys. Merry Christmas, happy
vacation.
Hanukkah, or whatever.
So do we need a motion to table this?
Oh, yes, well, we continue, well, we didn't, we didn't.
It was
really
just open.
officially- We
Yeah,
just
that
opened it.
had to open
and-
it to get us to the.
Yeah, so a motion,
I'll
yes.
make a motion to continue until the January meeting.
Thank you, Brian Rogan, and second is to Mr. Ayala. Okay, further discussion on that, all those in favor?
Aye. Thank you.
Thank you, good night. Happy holidays. Merry Christmas.
That's being.
All right, so we're out to old business, but really old business is pretty cleaned up because we're gonna see everybody on January 20th. So A, B, and C item is done, so which brings us to planner comments. Thank you for taking the mask off, you're starting to scare me.
Alright, I'm just trying to be cautious,
I know.
given the number of
Yeah,
people I have been around.
Yeah, but you are distant
yeah.
from
It's
us, so we
understandable.
want you to be
We're
able to,
protected.
and we're protected by this wonderful virus proof polygraph. Because, the germs only go high, they don't go low. Anyway, enough comments for this hour. Do you have something that you want to tell us about?
Do, so the first thing I have is that, you'll recall a couple of, back at the beginning of the year, most of you will recall. That the, Priority Electric, got approval for, improvements on, to build buildings on what had been the center of, nursery property at the corner of Orchard Road, right before it enters Berlin Turnpike. And they called earlier this week with regard to removing trees along Orchard Road because their tree guy who was there doing the clearing, and I went back and I looked at the minute of the approved plan, and it did say that trees would be thin, trim, openings cut for the proposed curb cut, as well as lower limbs and brush removed and diseased trees removed, damaged and just diseased trees. I can't pronounce anything, a lot of Ds in that sentence.
You're good.
So they called and said they really wanted to just clear those trees at the recommendation of the tree guy, and asked if that was okay, and then they would plant some new things, do some decorative planting. I did go by today, and the trees have been removed. In perhaps the essence of time, I don't know, but it was, however, I did go back and look at the plan and see that it said they would be thinned. I'm asking whether it's reasonable and okay at this point to ask them, in that the canopy, it was only gonna be a canopy anyway with the lower limbs being removed. And so therefore pedestrians or car traffic, at car height, you'd probably see underneath that canopy if they come in with a planting plan, replacement, street tree, and decorative planting plan for the front of their newly commercial property, if that's all right, and if you'd like to see it or if you'd like it for staff review. And let me know, the trees are gone. My speech had started with, what do you want me to tell them about the trees? And I found they weren't
And
there.
the arborist apparently must have told them they needed to go, so we probably would have gone with the arborist because they knew best. Softball, no, but now that brings us back.
With that said,
It's a
the residential area alongside there should probably, the trees that were taken out of there, maybe off of the side residential area.
Yeah,
He assured to me when he called and asked about the removal, that the trees would not be affected along that westerly property line to the residential. That he was talking trees along the street line being removed, and that I have a note here as well, also conflicted with, or we're starting to conflict with the overhead power lines that go through there as well. And certainly the overhead power lines don't go next to the house anyway, but he assured me those are there. There is a substantially tall stockade fence along the property line. I couldn't tell, if I went a little late in the day. I couldn't really tell what was left along the property line. I was too surprised the trees were gone in the front. To be
Yeah.
perfectly honest, I was stopped by the trees being gone already.
yeah. So how do we go right ahead?
I've been by the property in the last few days, and there is quite a bit of disturbance right up to the stockade fence. And so the concern about the trees along the abutting property is a concern, and he can give you all the assurances in the world, but I think we should have some window of time in which we establish to require replacement if we see that damage has occurred in that area. And I suspect that the removal of the trees along Orchard will ask for forgiveness and not permission situation. So I think we should ask for some nice landscaping.
Yes.
At least hedge-
And for the commission to see that.
Yeah,
resident
I think we
comment,
need to see it.
at least hedging it along that.
Normally,
fence
we
or
would
something.
let staff handle it, but I think in this case, I think we need to.
I only said I'd ask.
All right,
Don't come back for it.
any other items for us?
So then I have a small update.
Okay,
Kind of small, not really update, but, or not really small, but kind of small, the Steel Boulevard project. Steel
Oh, yes,
Boulevard,
oh, yeah.
the new boulevard coming off Farmington Avenue where the new buildings are going in, with Newport Realty. Through agreements and the access over the Amtrak land that gets Steel Boulevard to the train station have been somewhat stalled with, negotiations with Amtrak. So therefore, the road has to be, has to dead end for a time period. So in an unknown timeline, because there are agreements with DOT, Amtrak, as well as the town and Newport. And the engineers involved, including ours and town, as well as the applicants and the staff, have determined safe alternatives for the cars and traffic, the public that will be parking along Steel Boulevard, to turn around, to go back out, as opposed to in a Jersey barrier, for lack of a better, or a gate. And we have determined, we came up with a plan, and it's acceptable to Public Works. It will include some signage, some painting of traffic flow, and other signage, so that people know where to go safely and easily. And once the development of the residential parcels begin, we'll have some signage that says, residents only, no through traffic, that kind of thing as well. And I wanted to give you an update on that, because you might be asked, or you might be wondering, and that's the kind of thing that, I mean, you guys approved the plan for the road to go through, but it's stalled.
So even though we have all these people all in agreement, now it's stalled. I mean, it seems to me that, the plan seemed to have all the ducks in a row when it was approved. But now Amtrak's pulling back.
I think it's probably, and I'm not the one calling them and
No.
talking to them, but I think it's more about the approval process through them, much like, for a project along the state roads. They have to come to us, get approval first, and then they go to DOT to get their curb cut approved and all that approved. And I think this is a similar case where then the agreement, once they know they have an approvable plan, then they work out, then they start their review process and have to go through their reviews and whether or not they're willing to give that easement.
Doesn't Amtrak also have to go through the federal government as well?
I don't know,
Allow
probably,
things like.
it's all.
Easements.
Forget that.
It'll never get done.
Is the federal government supposed to be lands around, in and around stations?
The land there in this instance has land that's Amtrak land, Amtrak rail on state land. It's very odd the way the easements work through there, under the railroad tracks, and because of the train station and who has that parcel and what portions of it, and some of the lot lines are not as would be expected.
I was just curious because I know a lot of the rail systems, not only through Connecticut, but through other states, they have to go to the NTSB in order to get approvals already for signaling, for different things, et cetera. And sometimes I can get held up because sometimes it's go through review committees in Congress. So that control that.
Oh, jeez.
I was not under the impression it would be that, but again, I'm not the one that actually, that's being handled by our development coordinator. So, and it is.
It is anything
But we do believe the flow of traffic will work.
Yeah.
And then this is also,
Do you think it's just a temporary thing and they'll actually get it done with Amtrak or?
I think from the time that because the project does have state funding, that was part of the plan from the beginning. So,
So the state funding is a good one.
and Amtrak as well, it was all coordinated, but this is over a 10 to 15-year time period. So processes have probably changed. Who's signing approvals is probably, who does reviews and the level of review done at one time versus who's doing the review and what their standards are now. maybe altered and changed the process.
Are
I
they,
don't know.
they expect to get that building closed pretty soon, or is that?
Well, they were stalled for a while for building materials. And now they've been, the last time I was monitoring it, which was last week, they were moving pretty quickly to keep going. They're anxious. They're, you know,
They did put the building up pretty quick, but, you know, and our building, there was that,
no, actually, it was the inability to have, to start with, the steel bolts were stalled. They just weren't coming from anywhere. So that was a long delay. That was a very,
Supply chain.
it was a long,
They're in
road.
California.
Wait till they try to get
but we
cars.
do have bi-weekly update meetings on that project, an interdepartmental with their engineers, our engineers, consultants, environmental review, et cetera. We have a bi-weekly meeting and with updates. There have been a few canceled, due to, you know, just specific interest working on a specific element, but
The third floor.
And is there-
It looked a lot bigger than
Yeah, so do I.
and so the second half of that is the building to the east of Steel Boulevard, the
Yeah.
easterly corner, which was designed as having a second story and atrium. I don't wanna call it
Yeah.
atrium, but a big area, et cetera. They are talking about they're coming in with a revision to that. That you can expect to see. I have a small sketch. It won't end up in a change to the usable floor area. But it will change the design of the building. And the style, not the style, the design of the building, the height, et cetera. I have been provided a preliminary sketch of it, but I told them it needs site plan, well, they know it needs site plan amendment review for it. And in conformance with the design standards, and I'll be reaching out to the consultant that helped with the plans, and the architectural plans as well, for the town.
Yeah.
Does, you know, to have them all come together, to see if we still have the funding for him to consult further on this. But expect that change, and that's for marketability. You know, they were initially anticipating as occupants has changed, and so they want to change the layout of within the building.
Anything else for us before?
I don't think so. Oh, you have the packages before you for the 550, 554 for the turnpike. Because he was just gonna give the overview, it didn't make sense to just deliver just that, really, it was the substance of their applications,
So
of
hang
their
on to
packages.
that.
But hang on to them, if you don't want to hang on to them and you want them sent with your packet, please give them back to me with your name on them, so Fran knows who took one and who did.
Okay. Just because we've never had a chance to do this, and I know that we're gonna be out in an early time, so I'm gonna give the commissioners a chance to ask Maureen any questions about things you've seen about town. If things have been brought to your attention that you have questions on as far as, you know, planning and zoning. Now would be the time to pose those questions.
Why did you shut them down?
It wasn't pulled, it had just come in, so it was just a scheduling of the public hearing,
We're scheduling, yeah.
that was scheduling.
All right. One of the questions that somebody posed to me is they wanted to know about on Chamberlain Highway, that old gas station that used to be an automotive fix place. And now there was activity around it, and what is it, and did they pull the gas tanks? And
So,
what is that?
noting the activity there, we discovered who the new owner was, you know, search my records, so.
Yeah.
Difficult. But, we found the new owner, we sent him a courtesy letter saying, we see you're working on the property, before you do anything, you know, you really need to come to zoning and find out what the approval process is. There's no approved use, any use of the property needs new approvals. While it is a non-conforming use that for auto repair and formerly a gas station, so to see whether or not that non-conformity would stand or not would have to be a little more research. But, even that, because any change to your auto licenses needs to go back to zoning board of appeals, even just continuing that needs a town approval. So we wanted to make sure he was aware of that. A lot of people think they only need a signature to get their state license for DMV. They don't, they need to go to the zoning board of appeals according to our regulations and procedures. So we did reach out to them. The building department has also stopped. I think the fire marshal has talked to them. They have told us they are in contact with DEP for something, I believe this week. This week I heard they were getting a letter from DEP. I believe it was the fire marshal told me that a letter was coming from DEP.
Diane seems to know more about that than we do. That's
Perhaps I'll get an update.
She's smiling.
And he asked about repaving. He was told he could not change the paving. He could, you know, we can repave what was on the existing site plan. I didn't talk to him, Carol talked to him, the zoning officer, but he was asking if he could switch off some of his paving for another area, so he wasn't going to pave over the tanks, knowing he had to get them removed. We told him, you can not pave over that, that's fine, but you can't trade it without coming in for approval. And you have the limits of paving are limited to what is on the last plan that was approved, and I think that's
Do we know what his?
early
Do we know what
2000s
his
plan.
intention is? What's he doing?
We don't,
Oh, all right.
we don't. He, I think, had an idea that then isn't
More
necessarily, yeah, I suspect he's going to try to market it, but that's speculation. He
Okay.
didn't, and he led us to believe he didn't really know, or that's the
Okay.
word I got. Again, I did not talk to him directly.
But he knows that.
He knows he needs approvals. He got an official letter. We sent it. I sent a letter so that it was, he knew that activity on the site would be subject to review.
And how is our buddy Tommy Kokomo with Christopher Way? Is he all settled out there?
No, we are still waiting for some of the items in the stipulation for judgment to be installed.
Oh.
And he has, I think, one, maybe two lots that he still owns on the property. He sold off the other lots and a couple of them, well, there's only a couple that aren't CO'd anyway, but until the work is done, his cannot be CO'd. He would not get back his bonds, he would not get back other.
Any other commissioners, do you have anything that you see that you have questions about or concerns?
It was just brought up that the place with the equipment going in.
The Alta on the road trip?
Yeah, seems like a lot of work was done around there. I don't remember the plan saying that much.
They were gonna do a lot of
Earthwork
cleanup.
that on the
Yeah, well-
south side of it.
Yeah, on the side of it, because it's gonna be fenced in.
Yeah, they're putting in what they call the pit. I think.
Yeah, there's gonna be a pit where they can fix outdoor, they can fix some material. So if they have a machine that's brought in that's in the process of either waiting to be fixed or fixed, it's sitting there. And it'll be in the pit and it'll be secure and
Retaining wall.
there's gonna be a retaining wall, do you remember all that?
There it is.
All right, anyone else? This is the last bite at the apple.
It's on that topic, the judgment from, or the agreement from the court with regard to that property on Old Brickyard says that the tenant occupant needs to be out of there, I believe it's by tomorrow. I think that's the date. Today's the 16th. I'm almost positive it's the 17th that it says. So hopefully next week we'll have confirmation that that tenant is out. I do understand that the warehouse there does have the caretaker in the other portion of that building that will come down in that next phase. You might remember this phased plan showed the building coming down, I think for the third phase, the caretaker in the meantime, and I'll ask for certification, you know, with written certification, sealed certification, that that there is no tenant and that he is a caretaker and employed by
Okay.
the occupant of the site to caretake on the property as opposed to
So the violation,
another rent.
violations are being taken care of.
The violation should be taken care of by tomorrow with the tenant being out. There's some word that the tenants were, that the tenant actually had already moved. There's other, so we haven't confirmed he's out and we can't go in and the owner can't go in until after tomorrow. To let us in and confirm that his belongings aren't actually there, his body isn't.
And we really
He's
just
not
had one
actually
meeting in January.
Yeah, you would cancel, and you did it for next year too, because the meeting would be immediately after the holiday. So all the preparation for it would be next week.
All right, so everybody understands the 20th of January is gonna be a marathon meeting, if everything stays slated the way it is. So
Better get it.
bring your coffee. Bring your coffee, rest up.
It's gonna snow, so I can't make it.
Oh,
Yeah, I'm gonna
okay,
have-
well,
yeah,
that's
I'm gonna
okay,
have
I have to see Peter Zaragoza at this next meeting, so he gets a priority, and then
I might go on
figure out the
vacation.
other
so-
two. What?
Maybe I'll go away that week.
Okay, well, then maybe
Sounds like a
we'll need
good
all
group.
three of you.
No, it's gonna snow, so.
Oh,
I gotta
no,
go.
it's no. All right, so with that, I thank everyone for coming here, and I want to wish everyone a blessed and Merry Christmas and the happiest of New Year's. And I would also ask somebody to adjourn the meeting, and make a motion.
We'll make a motion.
Thank you,
I'll
Sandy.
second.
And we have a second by Mr. Biella. All right, then further discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, so moved. Good night, everyone.
Good.
For those of you online today.